15-year-old Sierra LaMar from Morgan Hill, California, disappeared on March 16, 2012, within a 10-minute time frame after leaving her house to head to her bus stop, as she did every day. Antolin Garcia Torres has been convicted and charged of Sierra's murder and kidnapping. Now in 2021, Sierra would have been 24 years old, but her body has still yet to be found. If you've never heard of this case, I'm going to be going over some of the details and even some updates from 2021. Let's get into it. Sierra May LaMar was 15 years old, born on October 19, 1996 in Fremont, California, to Marlene and Stephen LaMar. She is one of two daughters. Her older sister Danielle, who she called Sissy, was 6 years older. Sierra was known to her friends as bubbly, very popular, never took herself seriously, and never had a problem making new friends. She was just considered always happy. Her mother described Sierra as always in motion if she wasn't asleep. She was always able to hear Sierra in a different room, talking on the phone. She was either singing, dancing, making videos with friends, posting them to social media. One of her favorite things to do was to lip sync to rap songs or hip hop songs with her friends or even by herself and post them to social media. That was her favorite thing to do besides her love of makeup. She loved makeup and always doing her hair before school. She either wore it straight or wore it curly. Sierra's mother Marlene and Stephen LaMar lived in Fremont, California, where Sierra attended Washington High School. I believe in 2010 is when Sierra's parents ended up getting a divorce due to a crazy circumstance that I will actually share later on in the video. Her mother then remarries in 2012, and her new husband and the two girls end up moving to Morgan Hill, and this was sometime during Sierra's sophomore year in high school. Sierra was a little bummed about this move just because she was moving away from all the friends that she grew to know and just the life that she's only ever known. But she was very popular and very quick to adapt to her surroundings, so she made friends pretty quickly. She even became a cheerleader for her new high school's football team at Ann Sobrato High School. But only 5 months after this move to Morgan Hill, on March 16, 2012, as the sun was just starting to come up, Marlene was getting ready to leave for her job as a physical therapist. Before heading out, she went into Sierra's room around 7 in the morning, as she did every morning, just to make sure she was up and getting ready for school. She found Sierra already fully dressed and applying her makeup. She told Sierra goodbye, told her to have a good day, and then just before walking out, she slipped a $5 bill for lunch money into Sierra's purse, before heading out the front door, locking it behind her. At 7:11 a.m., Sierra texted her friend from school, making plans to share makeup and homework notes with her as soon as she got to school right before the bell rings. She then snaps a quick selfie of herself, posts it to social media, and heads out the door around 7:15 because her bus would arrive around 7:25. So right here is Sierra's home. This is the gate that she walked out of, and then she's going to walk down this street, and then she's going to make a left and follow it down to her bus stop right here where she went every single morning. So later that day, Marlene calls Sierra and she doesn't answer. She does this every day just to make sure that Sierra is home from school, and when she didn't get a response, she wasn't stressed out about it or concerned. She assumed Sierra had a long day and must have been napping. She thought, I'll just see her when I get home. But when she arrived, Sierra wasn't home. She starts calling her repeatedly with no response, so she starts to grow concerned and calls Sierra's dad. He lets her know that he hasn't seen her since the previous weekend and he hasn't heard from her since the night before. At this point, Marlene's starting to grow angry. This is something that Sierra's never done before, so she starts to call her friends and no one's heard from her or seen her. She decides to call the school to see if maybe Sierra stayed late. She then gets told by office staff that Sierra was marked absent in every single one of her classes that day. Now Marlene's realizing something is terribly wrong. Sierra again has never done this, so she frantically calls the police to report Sierra missing. Police come to her house and they ask her the normal basic questions. Was Sierra upset about anything? Do you think Sierra might have ran away? Where do you think Sierra is? She said she had seen her that morning and she was cheerful, happy, and it was just a normal day. When police asked the normal question if Sierra might have been upset about anything, Marlene ends up telling them it's pretty rare for Sierra to ever be angry or upset about anything, and if she didn't tell her that she was upset, she would definitely tell her older sister Danielle. Saturday, March 17th, investigators start fully searching for Sierra. At this point, Steve LaMar has drove the 45-minute drive to Sierra's house in Morgan Hill. They start to look into the family as they would for any case. They always start with the family and branch out to other possibilities. Steve LaMar takes one of the investigators to the side and tells him he has some news for him. He tells the detective that he is a registered sex offender. He said he wanted to let them know before finding out just because he wants to be 100% cooperative and he doesn't want it to come out later. He was doing anything he could to show and prove that he has nothing to do with the disappearance of his daughter. In 2009, Stephen LaMar was charged with 10 counts of lewd acts with a child under the age of 14. He allegedly molested his daughter's friends when they would come over for a sleepover. He pled no contest to one of these charges and did a year in jail and had to register for the rest of his life as a sex offender. He has been 100% cooperative with police and investigators. He has helped and done anything he can to help Sierra. So even though I know a lot of you would judge him, which I'm judging as well, but that case, or those charges are completely separate from Sierra LaMar. So I just don't want to go too much into detail of that situation because I want the main focus to be about Sierra. The Santa Clara Sheriff's Department began their intensive search for Sierra. They used cadaver dogs and they tracked the scent from her front door to about halfway to her bus stop, and then the scent was lost. The investigators said it was as if she got into a car willingly or forced. Either way, they believe that she was in a vehicle. The investigators then look into the bus driver. The bus had footage on it, a security camera every single day to keep track of kids going on and off the bus. This bus that day did not even stop at Sierra's bus stop because there was no child there. On the footage, you don't see Sierra anywhere in sight. Sierra is the only one that would get picked up at this particular stop, and there's no footage of Sierra at all. Friends and family began to make flyers of Sierra, putting them on coffee shops, grocery stores, light poles, just everywhere and anywhere that they could put her picture. Sierra was between 5 to 5'2", 100 to 110 pounds. She was last seen wearing a black sweatshirt with the San Jose Sharks hockey team logo on the front and the number 16 and the word Stonehouse on the back. She was wearing gray shoes and had a pink and black juicy purse. Sierra had natural dark brown hair, but during the time of her disappearance, it was dyed black. She had a 4-inch scar on her back and a mole on her neck. The search continued until nightfall with no leads. This night, the family could not sleep. It was extremely hard for them because they just thought Sierra was going to walk through the door and give them an explanation as to where she was, or even call and apologize and just figure out where she's been. But their hope was soon lost when investigators got their first lead at 3:45 that morning. Sierra's phone pinged on a cell tower, giving the police a proximity on where to search for it. Her phone was then located in a field right off the roadway, about a mile away from her home. Where Sierra's phone was found, they didn't find any footprints or tire tracks, so they believe that the phone only could have gotten to this area in the field by itself by a moving vehicle. When they found the phone, it was shut off, but it did rain the night before, so what triggered the phone to turn on and off and even be able to ping on these cell towers was when the phone got wet, it made the phone believe it was charging. So it would turn on and off for a few seconds and then it would shut off again. But it did it enough times to make it ping off one of these towers. Now going on to March 19th, there was hundreds of volunteers and investigators out there searching for Sierra. My uncle was actually one of the volunteers to go out and help. That's how I actually heard of this case, and then that's when I started hearing more and more as time went on. During these searches, investigators conducted sonar searches of the nearest reservoirs and the 3 lakes that were nearby, with absolutely no leads, nothing. Then eventually, that same Sunday, they got another lead. Just 2 miles away from Sierra's home was an unused shed, abandoned, that no one used, and there was tall cactuses and what appeared to be a bag thrown on top of one of these cactuses. They carefully collected this bag and brought it to the Santa Clara Crime Lab to be processed. Inside the bag, they found all of Sierra's belongings. They found her jeans, they found her bra, they found her underwear, they found her makeup, they found a book bag, they found the $5 bill that her mother left her for her lunch money, they found the sweater that she was wearing, and her gray shoes. DNA was found on her bag and jeans and came back to an unknown person. But even though it was an unknown person, they submitted it into the CODIS system. 3 weeks later, they ended up getting a hit, and it was associated with someone in the system. That person would be 21-year-old Antolin Garcia Torres. Antolin is a 6'1", 200-pound Hispanic male. He lived in a trailer park community with his then pregnant girlfriend Frances and their young daughter, located in San Martin, approximately 7 miles away from where Sierra lived. Antolin's criminal history started all the way back in May 2009 when he was just 18 years old. He lived in a home with several roommates at this time, and when police came to serve a warrant to one of the residents, Antolin became very aggressive, calling the police officers pigs and telling them to get the F out of his house, while blocking the police's entry to his home. He was then arrested and booked into the county jail. When he was in his cell, he caused a lot of attention to himself because he was bored. He took a whole roll of toilet paper and clogged the toilet to make it overflow, and he carved words into the cell walls. These might seem a little petty, but it did end up tacking on a few more charges for Antolin. He received 2 misdemeanor charges for obstruction of a police officer and vandalism. His court date for those charges was 3 months later, where he decided to waive his right to an attorney and represent himself. He was found guilty and only served 5 days in the county jail. Then in June 2010, Antolin's mother rented out one of her properties to his sister and her male friend. They were unable to pay the rent, but Antolin's mother gave them time to find a place before she would take legal action. But Antolin one day goes to the property on his own and demands that they get out. He isn't giving them any more time. They end up getting into an argument, and then the male friend gets involved. Antolin ends up taking the AC unit out of the wall and throwing it out of the window, which led the male friend and Antolin to get into a physical altercation where Antolin beat him severely in his head and in his face, which caused this male friend to end up in the hospital. During this time, this charge was taking place, Antolin was also charged with unlawful sexual intercourse with a minor because his girlfriend Frances was pregnant with his first child, and she was only 16 and he was 20 years old. While being held for this, his DNA was collected and put into the system, even though the charges for unlawful sexual intercourse with a minor were dropped. He was required to take a 16-week parenting class for this and also a 16-week anger management class for the assault on his sister's friend. Going back to Sierra's disappearance, even though they did find Antolin's DNA, they didn't arrest him right away. They didn't bring him in for questioning, and for good reason. They wanted to surveil him 24/7. They ended up tapping his phone, putting a tracking device on his 1998 Volkswagen Jetta. They even went as far as to rent out a vacant trailer across from his trailer, just so they can watch him 24/7 and keep an eye on his movements, when he left, when he came. They did this for several days in hopes that Antolin would unknowingly bring them to Sierra if she was alive and being held hostage. But that didn't lead them anywhere because he never led them to Sierra. At this point, police believe that Sierra is no longer alive. They decided to bring Antolin in regarding Sierra LaMar's disappearance. When they asked, "Do you know her?" he said, "I do not." He said he had never even heard of her until he saw her flyers posted up everywhere in town. Investigators described Antolin's demeanor as relaxed, calm, answered questions without hesitation. When asked what he did on Friday, March 16, 2012, he said he left his home around 7:20 a.m. and went fishing by himself. Then on his way home, he claimed that he stopped at a Bank of America to cash one of his paychecks. Police then asked him, would there be any reason anyone would say that you know Sierra or have had a relationship with her? He then gave a slight laugh and responded with, "I doubt it, why?" They then asked Antolin, would there be any reason your DNA would be in connection with Sierra? He then gave an embarrassed smile and gave an explanation. He began saying that he has a problem with masturbating while he is in his vehicle. He said he even kept tissues for this reason, and when he would do his thing, he would take this tissue and throw it out the window. He then said that he remembered he may have thrown out one of these tissues where they had found Sierra's belongings. This information didn't just seem implausible to investigators, but the statement also was very suspicious to them because he was trying to convince them why his DNA would be somewhere if they had found it, without even knowing if they found it or not. And then the most suspicious was because in no outlets did they even say what kind of DNA was found on Sierra's belongings. Was it hair? Was it skin cells? They never said that she was sexually assaulted or raped. So how would he have known that this was a semen DNA? But because they didn't have a body or solid proof that Antolin did this, they still did not charge him with anything, and they had no choice but to let him go. Police began to check out Antolin's alibi. He didn't really have one because he was by himself, supposedly fishing all day by himself, but they did pull footage from the entrance of his RV community, and they did see him leaving his home at 7 a.m. They also pulled footage from the Bank of America security footage. He did arrive there a little bit before 1 p.m., but he did go there to cash his checks as he said he was going to. Detectives see on the camera footage that his ankles from the very bottom of his jeans to a little bit above his ankle appeared to be wet. They couldn't be 100% because it was a black and white footage, but could this mean that if he disposed of Sierra, then he would have disposed of her in some type of water? Because they searched every single reservoir, the 3 lakes near her area, and never found any signs of Sierra at all. April 7th, due to Antolin's lack of alibi, his DNA found on Sierra's belongings, they ended up serving him with a search warrant for his vehicle. His car was submitted for evidence into the Santa Clara Crime Lab to be processed and to try to find any link to him and Sierra. Sierra's DNA profile was found on the rear door handle of Antolin's car and also a pair of gloves that belonged to Antolin. They also found a strand of Sierra's hair intertwined in a large rope located in the trunk. Sierra's family and volunteers were still extensively searching for Sierra, meeting every Saturday at the Sierra LaMar Search Center. They were still following up on tips and searching areas that have yet to be looked at. The family had a $10,000 reward, which later grew to a $30,000 reward for any information on finding Sierra. The search center stayed active for 3 years, all the way up until March 2015. On May 11th, America's Most Wanted aired the story in hopes to find out any information regarding Sierra. But unfortunately, nothing came from that either. After giving up on Antolin ever leading them to Sierra's body, Antolin Garcia Torres was arrested on May 21st, 2012. He was charged with the murder of Sierra with special circumstances of kidnapping. He was booked into the Santa Clara County Jail. After soon arresting Antolin, it gave investigators a reminder of the 3 series of attacks that took place in 2009. 3 separate women had been assaulted in 2 different Safeway grocery store locations in Morgan Hill, California. All 3 of these assaults were almost identical, and they were expected to have the same perpetrator. Each woman would get into their vehicle sitting in the driver's seat as a single male would enter through the back door. The first victim, Cynthia, was attacked on March 19, 2009. She was struck in the back of the head as an attempt to knock her out. But the man was unsuccessful doing so because of the screams Cynthia put off alerted all the people in the parking lot, which caused the man to flee. On the same day, but at a different Safeway location, another victim named Annette was attacked in the same way, but this time the perpetrator used a stun gun. The sounds of the struggle alerted people in the parking lot and caused the man to flee. During the man fleeing, he ended up leaving the stun gun behind. Less than a week later, a third victim, Ava, was attacked in the same way. Ava actually ended up keeping a knife in her car and pulled it out on the perpetrator, which caused the perpetrator to grab her by the wrist while she was holding the knife and forced her to hold the knife up to her own neck. And again, people in the parking lot were alerted from the struggle, and the perpetrator ended up fleeing the scene. Police came and took reports of all 3 of these incidents and even took the stun gun in for evidence. These are the same reports that the investigators would pull while looking into Antolin. They realized that both of these Safeway locations that the attacks had taken place, Antolin worked. They also compared notes and composite sketches and realized there was a huge resemblance. The stun gun that was found didn't have any fingerprints on it, but when they took the compartment in the back to take out the batteries, they did find a partial fingerprint on one of the batteries. The partial fingerprint wasn't enough to submit into the system, but they did compare Antolin's fingerprints to the partial fingerprint that was found on the battery. Santa Clara DA's office decided to charge Antolin with the kidnapping and murder of Sierra LaMar and attempted kidnapping and carjacking of the 3 victims in the Safeway parking lot. They wanted him to stand trial for all of these charges at one time. February 11, 2014, Antolin pled not guilty. The following May, district attorneys announced that they are seeking the death penalty for Sierra LaMar's case. If he were to be convicted and the judge were on their side and sentenced him to death, it would have been the first case without a body to be sentenced to death since 1989. January 2017, Antolin's trial began. Prosecutors presented the DNA evidence found on Sierra's belongings, the hair DNA that they found in the rope, the DNA on the rear door handle, and also the gloves that were located in the vehicle. They also presented Sierra's jeans, which appeared to have drag marks from the asphalt roadway. Prosecutors believe that Antolin had to have been stalking Sierra because of the short time frame that he had to abduct her. They also said that he left his home at 7 in the morning with nowhere particular to go. He didn't have a job to attend, nothing like that. So they just thought it was kind of weird that he left at 7 in the morning and there was only between a 5 to 10 minute period for him to have abducted Sierra. They don't believe it was a coincidence. They think maybe he had seen her at the grocery store, maybe followed her home, something of that sort, to actually have came across her. The defense tried to cast doubt to the jury, reminding them that there had been no body ever found, which doesn't prove that a murder even occurred. They tried to paint the picture that Sierra was a runaway, that she must have not been happy, leaving her friends from her hometown and moving to a new town. The defense told the jury, and I quote, "Sierra is missing and nothing else. She is not a murder victim, but a runaway." End quote. A journal that had belonged to Sierra was found at her school, and the defense used one of her allegedly written notes saying, "I hate my life. I'll be in San Francisco by 3/16/12. They also brought up Stephen LaMar's criminal history as a sex offender and began to bring the details of his charges. When the battery from the stun gun was presented in court, the defense used that Antolin worked at the grocery store and one of his normal tasks would be to repackage and reshelf items. They could have been opened and returned, and then Antolin would repackage the item and put it up for reshelf. They say that the fingerprints of Antolin must have gotten on one of these batteries during packaging and reshelving. The prosecutors then brought in a Safeway manager to argue this. The manager said that open packages were not reshelved around the time that the assaults had taken place. He said months later, a new policy went into effect where open items could be reshelved. He does not believe that Antolin was able to touch one of these batteries and reshelf them. During the trial, Antolin's mother, Laura, she tried to pursue the jury into saying that she met and married Antolin's father at the young age of 13 in Mexico. She suffered tremendous physical abuse from him while he was an alcoholic. In September 2012, just 6 months after Sierra's disappearance, Antolin's father, Gennaro Garcia Fernandez, was convicted of 17 counts of child molestation and is currently serving prison time for sexually molesting a female family member beginning at the age of 7 to the age of 14 years old. While on trial, Gennaro blamed the victim, saying, quote, "She was not even a virgin," end quote. Antolin's mother also claimed Antolin was very loving, caring, provided support to the family when they needed it. She had also said that Antolin was a great father to his 2 daughters. And a little side note, when Sierra went missing, Antolin had a baby girl with his longtime girlfriend, Frances, and she was also pregnant with his second daughter. During his incarceration for the charge of Sierra, she eventually had their baby. So she was born while he was in jail. So pretty much he was given an excuse to why he could have possibly done this crime. During the penalty phase of Antolin's trial, not only did his mother, but his sister and cousin also testified on his behalf. They testified about the poverty, abuse, incest, neglect, incarceration, and addiction that afflicted Antolin and his family throughout his life. They also brought in experts to explain how pesticides used on crops may have affected Antolin's brain development during his years, contributing to anger issues and low impulse control. Also during the trial, family and friends of Sierra spoke on her behalf. They shared memories and moments with Sierra. They showed a slideshow from when she was a baby to a teenager. During this time of Sierra's photos being shown, Antolin faced away from them. He didn't look at them, not even one time. Marlene LaMar also spoke to the jury during sentencing. She was very emotional yet very stern when explaining the pain that she was going through, not knowing where her daughter is. Then she looked over at Antolin and said, "What if it was one of your daughters? How would you feel?" And Antolin didn't even give her any reaction. But no matter what the defense brought to the trial, it wasn't enough to persuade the jury. After a 5-month trial, it took jurors 2 days to deliberate. Antolin was found guilty of the kidnapping and murder of Sierra LaMar, and also attempted kidnapping on the 3 victims from the Safeway parking lot assaults. Even though the defense was seeking the death penalty for Antolin, the jury came back and recommended life in prison without the possibility of parole, which later on the judge also agreed and did not sentence Antolin to death. After the trial, Sierra's family were very upset and disappointed. Stephen LaMar after even said, quote, "I would be lying if I didn't say I am disappointed in the verdict. He'll be able to live, Sierra won't. He'll be able to breathe, Sierra doesn't. He'll be able to eat every day, see his family, and we don't have that. The crime I thought deserved the maximum sentence, not the minimum," end quote. Antolin Garcia Torres is currently serving his time at Corcoran State Prison, located in eastern central part of California, which, if you're from California, it's somewhere between Fresno and Bakersfield. No funeral has ever been held for Sierra. Her family said it just wouldn't feel right without having her body. 2014 would have been Sierra's graduation year, so in honor of this, Ann Sobrato High School set out a chair for Sierra at their 2014 graduation ceremony. And also at her previous school, Washington High in Fremont, California, home of the Huskies, a memorial bench that wrapped around a tree was also put out for her on the campus with the plaque that read, "Sit here with me quietly, you'll never be alone. We wait to see you smile again and have our Husky home. Dedicated to Sierra LaMar and the memory of all missing children, 3/16/14. Antolin has never reached out to any news outlets or even spoke publicly. But now in 2021, he broke his silence when replying back to a news reporter. Although many reporters have reached out to Antolin and tried to get somewhat of an explanation for what he did or what he's up to, news reporter Amy Larson reached out to him and actually got a response. Amy wrote him asking him 4 simple questions, but he only responded back to 1. One of those questions were, "Do you still maintain your innocence?" His response was, quote, "Yes, Amy, I hold fast to my innocence," end quote. He didn't want to talk about Sierra's case at all, and he made that very clear in the letter. He said he doesn't trust news outlets because they paint pictures of people in a way that they want people to see them. He said he just doesn't want to talk and he just wants to do his time. I know in Antolin's case, he'll never give up where the body is because I'm sure he's hoping one day he'll appeal the case and maybe even be free. I hope that day never comes. This case to me is so sad because Sierra was such a beautiful girl. She was only 15 years old and I've watched her videos that she's made with friends and she just seems to have a really good personality, always laughing, had a beautiful smile, and it just is so mind-boggling how her body has never been found and she's still somewhere out there. Having my own kids, it just would be so hard to go on with life, and everywhere you drive or anywhere you walk, you just think, have I checked there? I need to check there. What if she's there? It would just be so heartbreaking every single day. So I can't imagine what her friends and family are going through during this time. Even though it's 2021 and it's years later, I'm sure it still affects them just as it happened today. That is all the details that I have on the case of Sierra LaMar, so if you have any information, I will leave the contact information below in my description bar. So don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in my next one.